Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you by MegaPixx Media. Joining me today is Don Kottick, who is the president and CEO of the Sotheby's International Realty Canada. Thanks, Don, for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Mario. Thanks for having me back. Great to be here.
All right. Well, Sotheby's put out a new report today on the luxury home market in Canada. One of the interesting things I want to talk to you about is the inventory deficit, quote unquote deficit, that's out there in the market and the impact that is having on the overall market at that higher end these days.
Right. Yeah, I think it's this chronic inventory shortage is something that has really plagued Canada for decades. I think it's been exacerbated because our population tends to grow, and government has never kept pace with bringing new starts that match the basically the population growth. And so we're seeing the effects of this, and we're seeing this in Calgary, we're seeing this in Vancouver, we're seeing it everywhere right now, right across the country. And it's a problem that the governments, they really fail to address properly. It needs to be addressed from all levels of government. And instead of the governments going after the demand side of the equation, whether trying to make mortgages more affordable, they really need to tackle the big issue, which is supply. And until they do that, we will be in this situation where we have a shortage. And we haven't even opened up immigration. They're talking about 1.6 million new residents coming to Canada over the next number of years. A large percentage of those people are going to be the home buying class, which is going to put more pressure on the supply. So once again, it's really up to all levels of government, starting at municipal, starting at the provincial, and basically going right up to federal, that everybody addresses this issue. And that's why we are today.
So what is the impact then of an inventory deficit? What's the domino effect of that?
Well, one of the problems is when you have a deficit in one area of the housing spectrum, it tends to reverberate through the entire spectrum. And we're seeing that everywhere. So that means that, even if if there's not a homeless shelter, enough space, then once someone moves from a homeless shelter to maybe a subsidized housing place, there's not a place for them to move along the housing spectrum. So this reverberates pretty much right up into the luxury end of the spectrum. And that's what we're seeing now. And in the pandemic, there wasn't enough inventory. So in the luxury space, a lot of the luxury buyers went out there and they couldn't find what they wanted. And traditionally, a luxury buyer wants to have everything done. They used to want to move into, I don't want to do any work. I'm moving into this luxury home and I want it perfect. Now, what had happened with the pandemic, the inventory wasn't there. So they had to say, well, you know what, maybe I need to settle for this. Maybe I'll go in and I'll renovate. And so what that did is it actually pushed some homes further up the luxury spectrum. So the pandemic had a big impact in terms of how the housing supply was working.
Let's talk a little bit about the pandemic, because there was a lot of talk in the last year and a half or so about people moving away from the downtowns, moving away from the cities, that type of sentiment out there in the market. But the report that released today talks about a return to city living. Can you talk about that and what's happening, and also for condo demand especially in the inner cities, right?
Right, and a lot of this, there's a number of different things that are happening. So right now, there's probably in most markets a shortage of detached and attached homes, and as a result of that, because of that shortage, the prices have been accelerating. And so then what that means is that people that would have liked to have moved into a detached or an attached home start to look at the condo as a viable option. So we started to see that impact. But I think one of the things too, as all of these protocols and changes have been brought in, a lot of people that were trying to get out of the city have decided, well, you know what, I kind of miss the vitality of the city. I'm moving back. We're seeing this in Calgary right now within the condo market, but this doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is going to shift back to the way things were. I do believe there's going to be fundamental changes in terms of people's buying habits. There's still going to be, we're still seeing in a lot of the, like in Canmore and even Lethbridge, we're still continuing to see people that want the bigger space. They're comfortable working from home. And we're seeing that also too from migratory patterns. A lot of people are coming from Ontario to move to Calgary because obviously the home of you can get a lot more home in Calgary than you can in Toronto. So we're seeing that migration happening. So those are just some of the things that have occurred. But yes, we are seeing this revitalization of our major centers, and specifically we're seeing that in Calgary.
Okay. One of the things that obviously fuels demand or fuels a housing market is consumer confidence. And, obviously consumer confidence, a lot of that has to do with whether or not you have a job, right? And so the employment situation, how is that currently fitting in terms of the luxury home market these days in Canada? Is the consumer confidence and the level of employment helping meet that market, in terms of activity?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of when we moved into the fall market, we had this election looming over our heads, and anytime there's an election, people tend to be a little hesitant. But I think if you look at the results in Calgary, for instance, September was a very robust month. So I think the confidence is definitely higher in Calgary right now, and it is higher all across the country. And we're seeing that translate into there's a lot of pent up buyer demand right across the country. And so we are seeing that as well too. So confidence seems to be very high right now, and that is definitely driving the luxury market. But we also have, during the pandemic, a lot of people suffered, but a lot of people were able to save a lot of money. They were able to, invest in, real estate and as well as other things. So they're sitting on, we estimate around anywhere from 100 to 200 billion of savings. So they're looking to put that money back into something, and the stock market is a little volatile. Real estate has proven to be a fairly stable source, and that's where we're seeing, confidence from these individuals wanting to invest in the real estate market.
Yeah, exactly. So, Don, one last thing as we look, we're into the fourth quarter of the year, last 3 months. What are your thoughts about the luxury home market in Calgary and in Canada, and what can we expect for the rest of this year?
I guess we're optimistic because there are a lot of buyers. We have no immigration at this point in time. So I think the market is probably looking very healthy for the rest of 2021 going into 2022. Obviously, in Calgary and Alberta, we still are closely tied to the fortunes of the province. So we have to kind of monitor things from that perspective. But all in all, I think we're very optimistic for 2021, 2022, just in light of the inventory and the consumer confidence and the pent up buyer demand right now.
All right, super. Thanks, Don, for joining us today.
My pleasure, Mario. Great to see you again.
All right, Don Kottick, President and CEO of Sotheby's International Realty Canada. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you by MegaPixx Media. Thanks for joining us.